Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about John Cena's final match. That will be up first. We're going to talk about the rest of Saturday night's main event, and then we're going to mix in some Smackdown. We're going to talk about everything here. So, let's get started. John Cena taps out to Gunther, loses his final match, and I said it as they started kind of pitching the idea that it probably wasn't going to be a good idea to have John Cena lose the match by submission. And I was right. I was proved right. Not only did the crowd go dead silent, but they actually turned on the booker. They didn't put the heat on Gunther. They put the heat on Triple H, which is not good. And then when you consider that they ruined the earlier match, the Obafemi Cody Rhodes match, which was the right decision, this one, it did not go the way people would have liked, I must say. Now, the match itself was good. Gunther is a good professional wrestler. He really is. He knows how to structure his matches very well. He knows how to be dominant. He knows how to control the pace of a match. He knows when to sell. He knows when to let the babyface start to come back. The problem that I have is the finish. That's the problem that I have. This lay and pray finish is boring as hell. You have to watch minute after minute of a guy basically in one place, immobile and not moving. In the case of Cena, he wasn't really even selling. He was just kind of laying there and letting it happen. And the fact of the matter is, they did the rule of three, where, well, they actually did it more than three, where Gunther slaps on the sleeper and Cena fights out of it. He fought out of it, twice, 3 times, 4 times maybe, before finally losing to it. And to have him in that hold for that long seemed extremely excessive to me. It seemed very excessive. Now, let's go through the match. All the accoutrements of the show, I think, were quite good. You know, the video packages, the various legends saying goodbye, and even they had Brock Lesnar, of all people. The Rock with his very fake smile, talking about, John Cena, you're the GOAT. Get out of here. Everything about The Rock is phony. The Rock is as bad as Cody. Worse, because he's been doing it longer. It's so fake. It's ridiculous. I cannot stand the insincerity of The Rock. I really can't. That being said, all the football teams and soccer teams and baseball franchises, everybody saying goodbye to John Cena, that all felt very sincere. It didn't feel like it was something WWE pushed out there. All the various wrestlers, even people who never worked in WWE like Trey Miguel, and people who have only known John Cena in passing. Even guys like Christopher Daniels, who apparently wrestled John Cena decades ago and had pictures and stuff. That was all fun. That was all very emotional. Everybody sharing their moment. It was great. All of that was great. When John Cena came out to do his entrance, he walked around and gave some hugs to like Kevin Owens and gave some dap to guys like Mark Henry and Haku, and that was great. Like him being embraced in that way was really great. Now, truly, there was people missing. Obviously, no Stone Cold Steve Austin, no Randy Orton. I mean, that's kind of rough. But it was okay. I think the people who did show up were very meaningful, and it all looked very professional, very nice. The match itself was long. It was a pretty long match, and a lot of that was delay and pray spots, where Gunther grabs a hold and just holds him down, and holds him, and holds him. But the early part of the match was pretty good, too, where Gunther had the match in full control. He was hitting John Cena with some lariats and kind of took him out of the match. It took the crowd out of the match, too. And Cena kept fighting out of, various sleepers. And, he hits the AA. He tries to powerbomb John Cena through the announce desk. Cena counters it, gives him the AA through the announce desk. Of course, I would have liked for that to have been somewhere near the finish, but whatever. They're escaping each other's moves, but not countering them completely. The final 5-knuckle shuffle was countered by a powerbomb by Gunther, but it wasn't the finish. Gunther hits a powerbomb followed by a big splash from the top rope. That was only a 2. And from there, Gunther did nothing else but lay and pray. Grab him and pray. And then Cena, they let Cena do all the work with the crowd. They did the old 3-hand drop where Cena powers up at the second on the last one. And then he gets out of it. And then he gets in it again. He powers out of it. He hits like one last AA. Gunther kicks out. He grabs the hold again. Cena gets up, runs him into the turnbuckle. But Gunther grabs him again. He gets up, runs him into the turnbuckle. Gunther grabs him again. And then eventually, Gunther decided to add the elbows to the chin and neck and slapped on the move one more time. And Cena tapped out. And I was not happy with the finish. Wasn't thrilled by it. I don't like that it wasn't exciting. That it was basically the crowd had expected Cena to get up again. And it's just another weird thing with, again, the lay and pray. That's the thing that really pissing me off. But I was pretty much primed and mentally prepared for John Cena to submit. If I had not been, I probably would have been upset. But I kind of was like, oh, Triple H really... It's the only logical thing that could put Gunther over because they have beaten John Cena, 3 times throughout this final year? They had him lose to Cody after he threw everything but the kitchen sink at Cody, and he couldn't beat him. They had him lose to Brock, and both times he lost were by pinfall, and he had him lose to Dominic Mysterio. That was also by pinfall and outside interference. So he had to lose to Gunther. That was tradition, and tradition says you go out on your back and you pass the torch. The problem with that is they probably should have did a better job of booking this run, because a lot of people wanted to be like Sting. Sting didn't lose his last run. He basically tore through the roster, doing cool shit like jumping off balconies and everything. Cena was never going to do that. But he really had some good matches and some good moments throughout his final year, but it was not what it could have been. And I think the WWE really whiffed on what it could have been and the stories that they could have told. Dominic Mysterio was the only young talent, and I guess Logan Paul, to get a real rub out of working with John Cena. Pretty much everybody else was 35 plus. It's nice and all to do, because it's difficult to do a retirement tour because when you have limited dates, because Cena wanted to do a full run, but the company limited his dates apparently. And when you do that, and then there are no house shows or anything like that, some of the guys that you want Cena in there with, and we've talked about a lot of them, Drew McIntyre and Brian Breaker and, guys like even Obafemi, who we saw earlier. It would have been nice to see him get in there with all those guys. Would have been nice to see John Cena give the big rub to a guy like a Javon Evans or somebody like that. And they decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to, and I hate to use the word waste, but they wasted spots on R-Truth. And they wasted spots, with him just coming out and doing nothing but getting beat up by Cody Rhodes for weeks and weeks. It all felt like something was missing. And that's still there at this point. And it all felt inevitable when we get down to the whole, all right, the last thing that they could possibly have done, the only thing they could have done to really put over Gunther, because they had seen to get pinned so many times during this run, is he had to submit. And it was the only way to make it work. And so they decided to do that. Now, what would the backlash be? We know that, people chanted, you fucked up at Triple H. But is it going to matter in the long term? Are people going to get behind Gunther as a heel? Well, you can't stop here. Like I said before, you can't have Gunther build up this heat and then that's it. Right? You got this guy who beat John Cena by submission. What is the next level for Gunther? So I'm thinking he wins the Royal Rumble. Kind of has to, right? Which means he has to go on and wrestle for the title, probably the WWE Championship, against Cody at WrestleMania. I would assume Cody. And he has to win that championship, right? Otherwise, what is all of this for? Now, the Gunther element of this whole thing is he needed some redemption because he lost to Jey Uso at WrestleMania. Now, that's a weird situation because he lost to Jey Uso. But, I mean, what can you do? Cena spent the last 3 or 4 years putting people over from, Austin Aries to Solo Sikoa. And it really didn't do a great deal for them because the booking dropped the ball. We're in a similar situation here with Gunther. If the booking does not match what they got him doing, then what was the point of all of this? And everybody who is a match mark, who only cares about match quality, we're like, man, guys want an LA Knight over this. So like, people wanted something exciting, right? Gunther is not that. He's methodical. He can be a little bit dramatic, but he's not exciting. This was not it was an effective match, but I don't think it was an exciting match. It wasn't the match that Cena could have had with somebody who was a more explosive wrestler. Again, I'm okay with Cena losing. I think people didn't want him to lose, but tradition, Cena wants to be very traditional. I don't think he wants to go out on top. But by submission to a delay and pray, I can't stand that. I hate that. That I don't like. I mean, if he would have just got beat by a younger, more badass Brian Breaker or Obafemi or something like that, it would have been a little bit more effective. But Gunther just laying on him for a collective, 6 minutes, just laying on him. Nah. It doesn't work for UFC. It don't work in wrestling. You're going to have to come up with something better than this. And the fact that they didn't think about that before they did this was goofy. People have been, maybe enough people haven't complained about the sleeper. Because it's the most basic pro wrestling move of all time. And if you don't put in any effort to make it look like a chokehold, like if you was doing it UFC style that looks like a stranglehold, then when people use that move in MMA, there's an immediate reaction. There's immediate attempt to escape or an immediate submission. When guys are just laying there forever in the move, that makes the move ineffective. And that was funny. But one of the funny things about this whole thing is John Cena's face when he finally decided to tap out. Somebody had did a edit of him the camera just getting in his face, and this little it was almost like a smirk that he put on his face when he decided to tap out, and it was almost like he's like, fuck this, like yeah, let's get this over with. And he was smirking again when he was sitting in the ring by himself. It was something or other, Punk and Cody comes out. They give him the belts. He raises the belts up. He tries to do something to get the fans back into it. They played a video package while Cena was watching. They were trying to get him to cry, but he was smiling and such when Vince showed up on the screen. So that was great. That was the one thing that was missing, I think. And the crowd was chanting, "We want Vince," after the show. They were chanting, "We want Vince." He was the missing ingredient, man. The missing ingredient. And you cannot deny that. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but it says a lot about the booking of the show, specifically that main event, when people are chanting, "You fucked up, fuck you," and chanting for Vince McMahon when the show is over. I think that says a lot when, and it's not just the smarky smarks are being smarky. A lot of these people were Super Cena fans. There was Super Cena chants. They wanted him to win. They wanted him to go over. And I think they would have accepted him losing. But I don't think they can accept the obliteration of the character. And from a storytelling perspective, it was the only way for it to make sense. You're killing off the John Cena character. So for him to say never give up and then to give up is officially the end of the character. That's how characters work. If you build a character around an idea and the character gives up that idea, they turn back on their values. Either that's the death of the character, or it magnifies a change in the character. But the character is pretty much done. If, when Spider-Man decides he's not going to be Spider-Man anymore, he's not going to go out and save people, well, the central element of Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility. If he decides he doesn't want to take on that responsibility anymore, then he ceases to be Spider-Man. The entire concept is moot. So you can start being like, hey, you don't want to be Spider-Man because you don't want the responsibility. If John Cena's entire character is never give up, hustle, loyalty, and respect, well, you could always use the respect element to say, look, he gave it his best, and that's that. He's 48 years old. What can he do? I definitely think there should have been a speech. There was no speech. There was this really odd ritual of Punk kneeling and Cody kneeling and them giving them the belts and Cena walking around showing off the belts. What did that mean? I don't know what that meant. That was odd, And then the Cena waits in the ring while we played his video package. We could have forgone all of that and just did a speech where Cena talked directly to the audience about the decision to submit, and basically gave them something where they could have gone home without being that upset, where Gunther still gets the heat, but Cena says something or does something to pacify that audience in the building. And I think foregoing a speech, because basically you're going to put him in the Hall of Fame probably, but that is a little weird. Cena takes off his shoes and his armband in the ring. He walks up the ramp, takes one final bow, thanks everybody, and leaves. Well, there's that. Look, I don't watch matches to grade them like, Meltzer and all of those guys. So I don't look at it from that perspective. I just say there was lacking excitement, but that typically happens in Gunther matches because his offense is so basic that it's just basically lariats, powerbombs, splashes, and sleepers. And then chops, which honestly, he didn't throw a lot of chops in this match. I was surprised to see it. He didn't chop Cena to death. But there's not a lot of complex offense when it comes to Gunther. It's very slow, and there are times when Gunther has really good matches and his finishes are really good, but a lot of the main roster matches have been basically him grabbing a sleeper and then the other guy not being able to respond, which I have not been a fan of. I have seen matches before when he was in NXT UK and such where he had good finishes to these matches. They've been high energy finishes too, even if he won by submission. But here, and for the last year or two since his main roster, main event push, some of these finishes have been pretty shitty, And it's basically just been him grabbing a guy and holding them. And that ain't going to work. Especially when you got him wrestling guys like Randy Orton and CM Punk and John Cena. It's like, come on. The lay and pray shit shouldn't work. So, while a lot of people wanted it to be like Sting, I think Cena has gone. He's been so unselfish for the last few years that he didn't want to be Super Cena on his way out. I think he wanted to be a diminished version of himself because that's what he feels he was. And he's said that in numerous interviews. So I think this is basically is the way he wanted it. But Triple H absolutely deserves to get booed for one, picking Gunther to be the final opponent. Two, okaying the finish to this match, which made John Cena seem like everybody else who can't get out of a fucking sleeper hold. Even though the guy has been getting out of sleepers for 30 years, all of a sudden he can't get out of a sleeper hold. None of that is something that you could not have worked with. The fact that Cena was going to retire, you couldn't do anything about that. But how you booked it, from the heel turn to the matches with guys like R-Truth, to wasting appearances for where he does nothing on the shows, to, you know, this stuff with this stupid tournament. Now Gunther wins the tournament and Gunther just basically chokes John Cena out. It was very bizarre. It's very bizarre. Let's move on, man, because I could be here and talk about this match for 2 hours, and I don't really want to do that. All right, let's go back to the beginning of the show. Obafemi, Cody Rhodes. Obafemi gets a superhero entrance on this show. Everybody is with him. The crowd is with it. He looks like a huge star. Big reaction. Oh, I love it. I love it. And then he popped up on Smackdown, so let's mix that in. Cody on the show says that Drew McIntyre is only half in, and that if he was Drew McIntyre's boss, he'd fire his ass. But he can't fire him, so he's just gonna whoop his ass. Obafemi shows up instead and claims that Cody is worried about the wrong man. That the future is here. The future is now. The future is me. I was like, oh, I fucks with this guy. Everybody knows I loves me some Obafemi. I really do. Obafemi and Cody Rhodes then go to have a pedestrian match where nothing exciting happens, right? It was a solid match. You know, they were building up something good there, but they didn't go full, do everything that they could possibly do because of the finish. And I actually appreciated that. The match didn't go a really long time. They were basically building something nice, and then Drew McIntyre jumped in the ring. Now, according to Nick Aldis, he was trying to contact Drew McIntyre because he wanted to bring Drew McIntyre back. This is just 7 days after he refused to let Drew McIntyre come back. He wants to now resolve his suspension. But now he's getting paperwork from Drew McIntyre saying that this is an unsafe work environment. Look, whoever is writing this show needs to be fired. You're an idiot. Okay? I don't know what else to say. You're an idiot. A fool. A damned one. Anyway, Drew McIntyre attacks Cody Rhodes in the match, so Cody Rhodes wins by disqualification. This was followed by a stare down between Drew McIntyre and Obafemi, where Obafemi shoves Drew McIntyre down. Cody attacks Drew McIntyre and Obafemi chokeslammed him. They want Obafemi to be a babyface, apparently. So, okay, this was fine. A lot of people was mad about this finish, too, because they were like, you know, why not just put the belt on Ricky and have Ricky lose? And I think that's a worse idea. Sometimes a disqualification can be very effective. And I think this is the best option. And that's why this match going on first was the best thing. Probably should have went on second or third rather than going on first with the disqualification finish. But the disqualification finish was absolutely the right finish. Mainly because Obafemi is a blue chip prospect. You don't pin this guy in his first match. Cody is the WWE champion. You don't pin him in this match. Well, Mongo, you shouldn't book the match then. Correct. You don't book the match then. You book Obafemi against somebody he can beat. But they didn't do that. They booked him against Cody Rhodes. So you're not going to beat him. It would have been idiocy to beat him. It would have been idiocy to put Ricky Starks in this position and beat him. Whatever situation they had decided to do was going to be dumb because they decided that the NXT champion was going to wrestle Cody Rhodes. Instead of an NXT standout, which could have been Javon Evans, It could have been Ethan Page. It could have been anybody. And it probably would have been better off if it was Ethan Page. Then you could have had Cody beat them. But you're talking about a top NXT guy on a show that is spiking viewers. No, you don't beat that guy. Are you crazy? No way. So it was absolutely the right move. Match number 2, Sol Ruka defeats Bayley. Oh my goodness, this one was really good. Sol Ruka did almost all the moves she knows how to do. She went out there and she showed the hell on out. And I want to give Bayley a whole lot of credit too. She was a great base. She was in position for everything. This match was mostly about showing off Sol Ruka. And they tried to do this thing where Bayley tried to keep her grounded. So there was a lot of Bayley doing, taking her to the ground and stuff. And Sol Ruka using her agility and her speed to escape these, this attempt at grounding. She nailed the Sasuke special, which was perfectly done. She did the cartwheel DDT off the top rope, which was Jake Atlas's finish. You remember the little gay boy they used to have working in NXT who went over to AEW and immediately got fired because he attacked his boyfriend? His finisher was that cartwheel DDT, and I like that move. I like it for Sol Ruka. So if she needs like a secondary finisher because of the Soul Snatcher, which should be a super finisher, I agree with. I think somebody said that at one time online, as that should be a super finisher. I agree with that. So she should have used the cartwheel DDT, even though you do have to be in position for it. It's not as, I don't want to say phony looking as the Soul Snatcher, but I do like that she did that. My favorite spot of the match wasn't even an offensive move. It's when Sol Ruka countered the Rose Plant with a handstand. I mean, just excellent stuff there. Bayley hits the Rose Plant at one point, but Sol Ruka got her legs on the ropes. Great job. And the finish is the Soul Snatcher. Bayley rolls out of the ring. Sol Ruka gets her back into the ring. Bayley tries a quick roll up, and Sol Ruka counters it to get the 3 count. Very well done by both girls. I enjoyed this. Some people are going to be frustrated about Bayley losing. Doesn't mean anything because Bayley is one of those guys that you can beat. She's, again, I say she's the Chris Jericho of the women's division. She's very much a rubber band where you can stretch it and stretch it and stretch it, and then you let it go, it just goes back to its original shape. So no matter how you push Bayley in one way or the other, you can make her world champion and she wins the Royal Rumble, but then you'll let it go and she just goes back to her regular space. You can make her a heel and make her a jabroni, and she loses every other match. When you let it go, she'll just go right back to her regular shape. She never becomes misshapen, And a lot of people will say, well, this is a bad career for Bayley. But no, it's perfect. I said last year when they were trying to make her the superstar, she's not that girl. She is a utility player. And she's really good at her utility. Again, the Chris Jericho, the Christian of the women's division. If you need somebody who can go out there and have a good match, give a good promo, get the crowd into it, show off what your opponent can do, lose or win convincingly, and not be hurt by it, Bayley is perfect. She's perfect. And Bayley did an incredible job with Bianca Belair when she put her over. So Sol Ruka got one over on Bayley. Clearly, you could always have Bayley beat her somewhere on NXT, or if you absolutely have to give Bayley her win back, which I don't think you do have to. I think that you play into this story and you have it maybe turn into a tag team thing where Sol Ruka and Zarya versus Lyra Valkyria and Bayley. Maybe you do that for NXT or something like that where you can make it a tag team thing if you want to continue this. But it fits into Bayley's character where she's been losing and been very frustrated. It actually works for her. But it's actually a great move to put Bayley on this show because she didn't make WrestleMania. So this was the biggest show of the year, technically, because there'll never be anything like it outside of, WrestleMania. This is the biggest show of the year. So and Bayley made the card. She didn't win, but Bayley doesn't need to win all the time. I think what keeps Bayley lovable is the fact that she doesn't win all the time. It keeps her in underdog status, where she gets to be very successful, but not too successful where you actually resent her position. All right, next they had Dragon Lee and AJ Styles defeat Leon Slater and Javon Evans for the tag team championships. A good match, very short. It could have been better if given a lot more time. For some reason, I think they needed to shove more commercials onto the show. And then they did a skit after this, which was very weird, very awkward, because this match was short and they could have lengthened it. But they started out hot with Leon Slater and Javon Evans getting a big jump on Dragon Lee and AJ Styles, hitting some big moves early. The huge plancha over the top rope for Javon Evans and the corner spot, which Leon Slater usually doesn't do until near the end of the match. He does it early in the match, actually. And then there was some pretty basic offense between the guys. And, they do some good stuff going into the final stretch. AJ Styles slips off the top rope when he was trying to go for the phenomenal forearm. Ooh, that was bad. First time ever he slipped on that joint, too. Sad. Your boy's old, man. Your boy's getting older. So they had to improvise, and the finish ended up being a Styles Clash on Leon Slater. So it was a good match. It certainly could have been better if they'd have given him a little bit more time. But it was face versus face. You don't want these guys killing each other. But, some people wanted Leon Slater and Javon Evans to win. I don't think that would have made a lot of sense to have them win, because they just had to lose the belts right back. Also, you got to realize Dragon Lee is a new guy here too, and I'm one of the biggest Dragon Lee marks on the line. So I'm like, yeah, it would have been great for Leon Slater and Javon Evans to win the tag team titles and look like beasts and all that kind of stuff. But what about Dragon Lee? He's here too. These other two guys are getting pushed big. Leon Slater doesn't even work here. You know what I'm saying? Like, Leon Slater doesn't even work in WWE. So, it's sensible, I must say, to do what they did. But I wouldn't have been mad if Leon Slater and Javon Evans would have won the tag team titles. I thought that would have been fine. The problem I would have had, however, is how do you get the belts off of them? Which would have meant you had to do a rematch of some sort just for these guys to get the belts back. And, would have been fine, because I don't know what else you could do with Dragon Lee and AJ Styles. It's not like there's a bunch of other tag teams, in the mix. There's basically like 2 other tag teams in the mix. So you probably could have taken the risk and put the belts on Leon Slater and Javon Evans for a week or 2. And I think there's another Saturday Night's Main Event before WrestleMania. Not before WrestleMania, before Royal Rumble. And you probably could have put the belts back on Styles and Dragon Lee there. So you probably could have gotten away with it. You could have just had them drop them on Raw as well, if that's what you wanted to do. So I understand, hey, there needed to be a surprise on the show. And this would have been the biggest surprise to do, is to have Slater and Javon Evans win. And I actually can get behind that. But at the same time, I'm like, I see why they didn't do it. Triple H is a very conservative booker. He takes the wrong kinds of risks. And I think that whole Gunther thing, which I promise I'm not going to relitigate it until probably near the end of this. But that was him taking risks. He's not going to risk putting the belt on a TNA guy, which would have put Javon Evans and Leon Slater over in a big way. For a guy like Leon Slater to win a tag team title in WWE without even working there would have been a big deal, but they decided not to go that route. It's fine. So The Miz crashed the party. He's demanding respect. R-Truth came out there and said that The Miz did something inappropriate with Nick Aldis's balls. He stole somebody's opportunity, and the opportunity he stole was from this guy. And I thought he was talking about himself, because, we were promised that R-Truth was going to be in that tournament. But it turns out that the spot was for Joe Hendry. And the building erupts when Joe Hendry's name is said. building just absolutely almost collapses. I know a lot of people, if you're on the internet and you hate Joe Hendry, boy, you're not having a good time, because WWE is milking the shit out of Joe Hendry. They really are. They really should have just put him in a match on this show. They really should have. I don't know what match they could have done. Maybe Joe Hendry versus Cody Rhodes, but they really should have put him in a match on the show. Instead, they did a segment where he beat up The Miz, which is fine. The Miz was on Smackdown. He got beat up by Javon Evans. The Miz was very upset about not getting a match at the John Cena show. Javon Evans showed up. Miz called him a kid. Javon Evans called Miz Unk, and a match was made, which Javon Evans won. So they were preparing Javon Evans for this big match here on the show. And he's slowly but surely building a whole lot of name value. So that was the entirety of Saturday night's main event show. It was only 4 matches with 1 segment, a ton of commercials and video packages in between. They did 20,000 people almost, 19,176 in the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. So a sizable audience, but not obviously the biggest audience that they could have had if they'd have gone to a bigger arena or tried to push this thing for WrestleMania, which leads a lot of flat scans who are talking about Tanahashi's going to have 50,000 people at his retirement show. Sure, there's going to be 50,000 people at the Tokyo Dome in the biggest New Japan show of the year, and they're not going to get anywhere near 50,000 people again because that company is dead. All right, that company is basically a living library. All right, but Tanahashi versus Okada is going to be big. I may even try to find a way to watch that. But nearly 20,000 people in Washington, D.C. for Saturday night's main event is rather poetic, if we're being honest. Washington, D.C. is where the company was founded. Back Capital Wrestling back in the 1950s, before it was the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, before it was the World Wrestling Federation, before it was WWE. It was Capital Wrestling out of Turner's Arena in the 1950s, man. And this was their first home. This was the home when Vincent J. McMahon started the company. So it makes sense that you would have a huge event for Washington, D.C., but WWE doesn't really utilize that history as part of anything in their company. So I'm not surprised at all that most people don't know this. Most people were raised to believe that Madison Square Garden was the most important arena because that's what it was in the 60s when Vincent J. McMahon eventually got to Madison Square Garden and started running shows in the New York and Northeast area. That became the Mecca. But before Madison Square Garden, there was Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of history there. And Triple H sometimes likes to play with that history, like when they did the Capitol Wrestling Arena, the Capitol Wrestling Center, for when they renamed NXT the building. That's why he did that. But let's not go into more of that. I like talking about wrestling history, but we need to move on, guys. We got to get through this shit, right? Okay, let's get through Smackdown now. I know you guys love Smackdown. Let's get there. Ilya Dragunov defeats Tommaso Ciampa. Dragunov looks like a war veteran after every big match that he's in. He's always bleeding and red, and this time he was bleeding from his mouth, and it just looks like Ciampa probably shot him in the face. It was insane. Dragunov took an air raid crash onto the ring apron. He took another one off the second rope. I mean, they were beating the hell out of each other, man. Even DIY shenanigans couldn't help Ciampa, though. So, Dragunov wins. His angle with Tommaso Ciampa, I'm guessing, is over. So, there's that. Johnny Gargano attacked Ilya Dragunov after the match, and Carmelo Hayes helped chase off DIY. Got a huge reaction, too, So, the angle with The Miz and the online push is starting to actually work for Carmelo Hayes, and he's starting to get really big reactions, which I appreciate. I appreciate that quite a bit. So I'm guessing we're going to merge Carmelo Hayes back into the United States Championship picture, which is fine. I'm okay with that. I don't have no beef with that issue right there. I do need some storylines for Dragunov though. This whole thing with Ciampa was a waste. Ciampa is a great wrestler though. He really is. But he comes across as being extremely lame when he's hanging around Johnny Gargano. It's very unfortunate. The Wyatt Six come out there, and boy, oh boy, I am ready to drown this entire gimmick. Not baptize it, just drown it. They need to go away. Bo Dallas cuts a promo. It was not good. Talked about Solo being abandoned by his real family because he's a user who abuses other people and he's out of his mind. Solo pops up on the screen and said that they want the tag team championships. I don't want any of this. I don't want none of this. And only thing that was going on in my mind while this was happening, it was one, I don't need to see Bo Dallas anymore. I can't believe this is still going on. Two, where is Jacob Fatu? Jacob Fatu has been gone for like a month, over a month. We don't get updates on people anymore. Guys just vanish. They fall off the face of the goddamn earth. Where is Jacob Fatu? I don't know. I don't want anything to do with the Wyatt Six. I don't want anything to do with the MFTs. I don't want nothing to do with any of those people. Lash Legend defeated Alexa Bliss. They changed Lash Legend's theme song. It's now more generic. At least I could do the Project Pat chicken head thing to the original theme, but they got rid of it. There was obviously some outside the ring shenanigans with Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax, but ultimately Lash Legend did win the match with her lashing out, her big finisher. I don't know. I don't remember what her finisher is called. I just know what it looks like. And she could have used something a little bit more simple. I think they should change her finisher. I don't think her finisher needs to be that she goes, wraps your body around her back. She's a big girl. big girl. But I don't think that's necessary. So, we're still in this tag team thing with Alexa Bliss and Charlotte and Lash and Nia Jax. And they're just going to continue doing tag team stuff. Whatever. Just whatever, man. Alright, let's get into the Jade Cargill stuff. So Mia Yim was pissed off about Jade Cargill's bullying. And then Jade Cargill attacked Mia Yim backstage and just beat her up. They were supposed to have a match between the two of them. It was actually announced on this show that they were going to have a match. But Jade Cargill was not dressed for a match. And she was wearing a thong. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And she basically beat up Mia Yim, then went to the ring and said that's going to happen to everybody who don't know their place. And then Mia Yim shows up with a kendo stick and attacked her. It wasn't enough, however, as Jade Cargill beat her up and chokeslammed her. They're trying to stretch this thing out. Why is the women's division this way? The women's division is so bad on SmackDown. It's so bad. Holy hell. It's awful. I mean, look at all the girls, like Julia has disappeared. Kiana James has disappeared. I don't know where Chelsea Green is. It's basically just Alexa Bliss, Charlotte, and Jade. That's pretty much it. Lash Legend's new to the company. She just had her first goddamn match on this show. But most people, like Tiffany, is hurt. Bianca's just about to have surgery on her hand. She's been out since April. And she's just now about to have surgery on her hand. Look, she might as well just fucking retire at this point then. This must be the most retiring thing injury I've ever seen. I've never seen anybody get hurt. If Vince was there, she'd have been back 2 weeks later. Guaranteed. Without question. She wouldn't be gone this long. Unless her hand was gangrenous and she had to cut off her hand at the wrist, she would not have been gone this long. It wouldn't have been possible. They didn't even put her in the WrestleMania commercial. Over a finger injury? You don't put one of your most marketable stars in the WrestleMania commercial because she's got a finger injury. These people are retarded, okay? I don't know what else to say. This is ridiculous. Tiffany Stratton, I don't know where is she? We don't know. Apparently she's hurt too. We had to figure that out when she started doing comeback stuff on social media. we weren't told that these people are injured. It's the same thing with Jacob Fatu. We are not being told whether they're injured. Like usually, it used to be that if somebody was hurt, we would be told about their injuries, or their rehab, or there would be an angle preparing for them to come back and all kinds of stuff. But none of that stuff's going on anymore. It's 100% out of sight, out of mind now. So nobody's mentioned ever. Nobody is mentioned ever. It's ridiculous. So Mia Yim gets to another week in the spotlight because they decided to cancel her match this week. They can only have one women's match a week. So that's that. And that mixed tag team match, oh my lord. My lord in heaven. Zelina Vega and Aleister Black versus Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. That poor Zelina. That poor baby. She botched everything possible in that match. She botched her code red. She fell all over the place. And you know what? I saw some fans of her saying, look, she ain't wrestled in a long time. And that's true. She has not wrestled that often. When they got rid of house shows, a lot of people got rusty, and actually explains why so many people started getting hurt, because they don't work that much. But she's been in the business for so long, this should be second nature to her. For her to be able to screw up everything she tried to do, or pretty much everything she tried to do, that's just rookie shit going on right there. So it looked bad. Obviously, Rhea Ripley pinned Zelina Vega to win the match. Hopefully this is over. Can it please be over? I want to say something about Aleister Black too. I like Aleister Black, I really do. But his strikes look like they look a lot like Speedball Mike Bailey strikes, where he throws punches and it looks like there's nothing behind them. No malice, no force, nothing. His kicks land, with some stiffness because he's wearing kick pads. Again, same thing as Mike Bailey. But those punches don't look very good. They really don't. But I generally like the gimmick of Aleister Black. I like the presentation of Black and Vega. But his strikes just look very weak. And I'm not a big fan of what they're doing with Damian Priest either. But this was the main event of SmackDown because Rhea Ripley was involved. And hopefully this is the end, man. I know it's not, because it's not a blow-off match material. But this is not good. This was not good. This was not good. I've been talking about the shrinkflation that's been going on with SmackDown, where they're extending these matches and they're doing less on the shows. There's tons more commercials when there's fewer matches, fewer segments, fewer people being featured. And I was like, man, it's not just a matter of the shows have shrunk. It's that the time that you dedicate to things have extended longer than it needed to be, And then they dropped the atomic bomb on us that SmackDown is going back to 3 hours. And I think I'm going to officially move my SmackDown watching to Saturday morning. I think that's the best way to do it, is the moment SmackDown goes back to 3 hours, I probably will not be watching it live. I probably will be watching it on replay somewhere where I can fast forward through the matches I don't want to see. At the same time, you add another hour, that just means you add another match. That's really all they're going to do. You're not going to add more story and have more time for more characters. You're just going to have another 15-minute match. That's what you're going to do. And there's going to be tons more commercials. That's what you're going to do. I already know that because that's what they're doing. All right? That's what they're doing now. So why would it change? They're probably just going to have another tag match or another women's match, and that's it. Nothing else is going to change. I see a lot of people complaining. They're bitching and belly aching. I get it. I respect it. I don't want SmackDown to be 3 hours either. But I've already decided what my fix is going to be. I'm not watching it live. I'll see it Saturday mornings. I don't work on Saturdays. So I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out from there, man. Because you look at these shows are barely worth watching. They're not worth reviewing or talking about because nothing happens on these fucking shows. If you was to say, Mongo, what happened on Smackdown that you absolutely need to see? The answer is nothing. The main event angle is stupidity. Cody Rhodes wants to fight Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre wants a championship match. He wanted to be reinstated. Nick Aldis said no. Now Nick Aldis wants to reinstate him, but Drew McIntyre don't want to come back. This is ridiculous. And we're just dragging ass. This is the main event angle here. This is not some mid-card stuff. This is the main event angle. This is the top of the SmackDown roster. This is corny. It's terrible. The mid-card is Ilya Dragunov, who is a great wrestler, in random matches every week against opponents who are not over and really don't pose a threat to him. But he has a good match, and the matches are usually pretty long. I don't know. What more can we do? Well, we could do more. We could do storylines. We could do people trying to challenge him. You could, if you wanted to do storylines with, who is the growling guy? Who is it? Tama Tonga. Okay, Tama Tonga clearly wants to fight Dragunov. We've been teasing that. Why isn't Tama Tonga on the show winning matches? Why isn't Tama Tonga cutting promos about him? Why is Tama Tonga stuck in this MFT thing with the Wyatts? Couldn't he be wrestling like, Dexter Lumis and beating him in pretty short order or something like that to kind of build his own personal story within the Wyatts MFT story where he could be getting wins over beating Eric Rowan and Joe Gacy and all these guys. And then, he comes across like a threat when it's time for him to fight Dragunov. But that's me putting more effort into the story than they're putting in. They're not putting any effort into this. So it is what it is. SmackDown is a uniquely bad show. Just uniquely terrible show. So that being said, let's wrap this thing up. John Cena's final night. No Vince McMahon, no Donald Trump, which I didn't expect either one of those. Nick Khan wouldn't even say Vince McMahon's name on a podcast. So I figured Vince wasn't going to be there. And Donald Trump not being, he has other things to do. Okay? But it would have been nice, but it also would have been a distraction. And I think not distracting the audience with Trump and Vince and all that kind of stuff was the right move. That being said, what they did do, obviously I was partially in agreement with it. I wasn't in agreement with Gunther being the opponent. I wasn't in agreement with the submission finish. I think I would have gone younger. I would have gone with the guy that you want to be the face of the company in the future. Similar to when Roman Reigns beat Undertaker at WrestleMania and was the second guy to beat him at WrestleMania. And they did that knowing that people would hate it. But it was about passing the torch. That's what they wanted to do. And these passing the torch moments are always going to have people extremely emotional as they don't want to let go of the past. But Vince had a master plan. His master plan is the epic rivalry between the only two people to ever beat Undertaker at WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. That was Vince's master plan. And we see that it worked because Roman Reigns became one of the biggest stars in the business after he beat Undertaker at WrestleMania. Now, it took from the turn heel, which, yeah, that was the right. He should have turned heel after he beat Undertaker at WrestleMania. But, they eventually got there. And the Brock and Roman matches ended up being pretty good. But they don't have a plan here when it comes to Gunther because there's no counterpart. If he's going to be the biggest, baddest heel in the company, who's going to be the bright, shining hero? Because right now, Braun Breaker is a heel too. Javon Evans is still on NXT and so is Obafemi. Who is Dominic Mysterio as a heel? Who is going to be your conquering hero babyface that leads us into this next generation? Because I don't see it. And this should have been in place before you made this decision. Because as I said previously, and I maintain, I don't think Gunther is going to be around for 10 years. I don't think Gunther is going to be around 5 more years. I think he's going to make the money and then go back to Europe where he wanted to be. He never wanted to move to the United States anyway. He consistently said that. And that's part of why the reason I don't think he should have been the guy to retire Goldberg and John Cena is because he doesn't want to be in this company or in this country. So, and he was open about all of this stuff. You know, he's doing, now, again, I said this before, he's not a mark. He's doing this for the money and the status, which is the right way, reason to be doing this stuff. But the company needs a certain amount of loyalty and a certain amount of expectation when you're in this spot. And Gunther just doesn't have it. He's not Hogan. He's not Cena. He's not a good warrior, you know, a good soldier. He's not Bruno. You know, they need another guy for that. And they need somebody that's going to be able to take that off of Gunther pretty quickly, and they don't have anybody right now. So when you look up and down this tribute card, they didn't really feature a new face in a dominant position, somebody that could stand up to Gunther and say, this is the match you want to see down the line. Because Obafemi was the guy, but he won by disqualification or lost by disqualification. And that was it. You know, they didn't feature the guys that they should have featured. So it is what it is, man. But Triple H, he knows what he's doing, right? That's what y'all think. I'm going to take y'all word for it. On to the Royal Rumble. John Cena wants us to forget about this thing. He doesn't think we're going to care. So I'm going to agree with him. Raw is on Monday. Something bad's going to happen on Monday. Then something bad's going to happen on Friday. And as you know, this whole John Cena thing is going to be in the rearview mirror. But if you're TKO, you should be looking at your bottom line. And you should say, now how are we going to sell tickets without John Cena? Now what do we do? Can't drag out Undertaker. Can't drag out The Rock. Can't drag out John Cena. Now what? TKO, you got what you was looking for. You banged out a bunch of shows with John Cena on top with a lot of merchandise. And he could continue to sell merchandise without wrestling. But he was the reason that attendance was up in a lot of these shows because the creative, especially on Smackdown, has been booty butt cheeks. And it's continuing to be so. So now what? Who's going to be your knight in shining armor that's going to save SmackDown? Cody Rhodes? Get real. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.